Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen celebrates our inability to adopt, so I kicked her out of my house. After that, don't calculate a table's bills the moment you get their order ticket. It makes it harder to keep track. You got it, boss. And after that, the wholesome tale of Catherine, an unusual guest that I judged way too soon. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen has to rub the lotion on its skin. Goodbye, horses. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen celebrates our inability to adopt, so I kicked her out of my house. My husband, who's 36, and I, 34 female, have been foster parents for the past 6 years. We usually only had short-term placements, around 4 to 8 months or so. Then 2 years ago, we had Caden placed with us. He was 4 at the time. It was supposed to be another short-term placement, but then things changed and it became clear he was going to be with us for a while. After a year, we were told his plan was likely changing to adoption. We decided we would if that happened. Eventually, we were told we were going to be able to. My brother's wife, Denise, who's 40, was adopted at birth and originally was a great resource for us. We've always done our research to be informed and to best help any kid in our care. Things were fine until we shared we were going to adopt Caden. Denise said that we were stealing him from his family and that we should fight to keep him with his family despite no family stepping up. Well, in the end, a relative did step up and applied for kinship. They received custody of Caden and will likely adopt them. It is truly the best thing for Caden to stay in the family, but it doesn't mean that it isn't extremely hard on everyone involved. We raised him for 2 years. We love him, soothed every nightmare, fever, etc. We built a bond. It was also hard to explain to him why it went from, "we're adopting you," to, "you're going to live with," insert relative that he didn't even know well. Caden was reunited with the family member on January after only 1 week's notice. The family has also decided we shouldn't see Caden. It's their right and we understand, but we've been essentially cut off from his life and we'll never see him again. It's hard. My husband and I have gone through a grieving period. We decided to take a break from fostering. We recognize this was the best thing, but it doesn't make it any easier. Most of our family has been pretty understanding and supportive as we work through our grieving. Everyone except Denise. She keeps saying what a wonderful thing this is and we need to stop being sad, that it's not about us. On Saturday, she and my brother came over. We were having a decent day until I came across a picture of Caden on my phone. I got a little teary-eyed and I had to leave the room for a moment. I returned and I apologized. Denise got snippy and said, "You need to cut this out. He wasn't your kid. This is what's best for him. If you truly loved him, you'd be over this by now." I was still kind of upset and mixed with everything I was going through. I screamed at her that she was an insensitive little jerk and she only looks through things from her perspective. I said, I understand she resents her adoptive parents, but that doesn't mean we were wrong for wanting to adopt Caden. She tried arguing with me, but I threw her out of my house. She left in a huff. My brother has since called and said he understands that Denise is candid, but I was wrong to scream at her, and I could have handled it better. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It's like she's taking every opportunity to rub in how she was right, when you're not saying she wasn't, you're just having understandable, sad emotions about the situation. It's not like you're looking at Caden's picture and going, "We need to go to that charlatan's house and take him back right now." I'm glad you were able to do what was best for Caden, and I'm sorry that it's caused you so much pain. The two are not mutually exclusive, and it seems like you realize that, and Denise missed the memo. Edit. It's also only been around a month or two after you bonded with him for 2 years and you were preparing to adopt him. Denise comes off as really cold, even with her own adoption history factoring in. Don't calculate a table's bills the moment you get their order ticket. It makes it hard to keep track. You got it, boss. Info. This does not take place in the US, Europe, or Australia. This is set in Asia. I won't clarify where since it's not important, just wanted to give you guys context. For starters, I'm 23, a university student working part-time at my aunt's restaurant to make a little extra moolah before the academic year starts. My job is pretty simple. It's an all-rounder job where I need to take people's orders, send tickets to the kitchen, calculate each table's bills, handle payments, and clear tables. I'm only here until the end of the week because I secured another gig elsewhere before the academic year starts, so I figured why not finish this week for a little extra cash before then. I get along with most of the staff, all of whom are a decade or so older than me, and said individuals work at the restaurant full-time. There's another part-timer who's 19 who's working here, and he comes to work whenever he's able since he's studying too. He wasn't around for a couple of weeks, so I've been left to sort out mostly waitressing matters. My shifts during lunch hour get particularly busy, which is why my system keeping the workflow super smooth is a crucial point to this post. The moment after bills have been settled, tables need to be cleared immediately because new customers come pouring in and some insist on being seated even before the tables have been cleared or wiped down. I came up with a system in 3 weeks that I've been here that works for both myself and my colleagues. Upon receiving tickets for orders that have been received, I always key in their order according to the table they're set at, so that it's less time-consuming in the event other customers want to settle their respective bills. Customers are expected to come to the payment counter when they're ready to pay, so this system is a lot easier and much more efficient than letting tickets pile up and only calculating the bill right when customers are about to pay, which results in a longer line. I always make it a point to ask customers if their food has all arrived, if they were satisfied with the quality of their order, and if they ordered anything else that I hadn't seen on their tickets. Once they verify that their orders are correct, that's all. I go about my day and mind my business. That was until the other part-timer approached me earlier today. His point was an eyebrow raiser for sure. I'm not the type of person to pick fights or argue, so since he was so insistent that my way of doing things was making it difficult for him to keep track of additional orders at each table, I decided to just let him have at it since he was so happy to tell me how to do my job. I simply smiled and nodded at him, making a beeline to the cleaning supplies and thinking to myself, "You want me to stop punching in people's orders? Sure thing." For a solid hour or two, I only collected the tickets, bringing them to the cash register and letting them pile up, just as he requested. When I noticed customers stand up from their seats and making their way to the payment counter, I would speed walk to the cleaning supplies and start collecting plates to show that my hands were occupied and that I wouldn't be able to sort out people's bills. I left it all to my dear coworker, who tried telling me what to do and how to do it. It was the right call to make, because the line that followed, due to his insistence on changing the system, snaked about halfway through the restaurant, full of customers waiting their turn to pay their bill. Once lunch hour had died down, I smiled to myself and went back to keying in people's tickets the way I always had. My part-time coworker sheepishly approached me with new additions to existing orders since then. The Wholesome Tale of Catherine, an unusual guest that I judged way too soon. Hello, it's me again, a B&B owner that mostly has wholesome stories to share, and I thought I'd post another today to hopefully make you smile. This last week we had a guest, let's call her Catherine, who turned out to be one of those people we're not likely to forget anytime soon. Catherine is in her 60s and upper middle class judging by her clothes, sports car, and extensive plastic surgery, which tends to give her unlined face a look of perpetual slight surprise. She had booked a studio with a kitchenette and breakfast because she wanted to experience the snow, and our mountains are the best bet in a 5-hour driving radius. No idea what brought her to our humble B&B rather than to one of the 4- and 5-star resorts in the area, but she turned out to be genuinely lovable. But let's start from the beginning, her arrival. Unfortunately, climate change is real, and these last few winters have been serving a lot more raining days, storms, and gray skies than the snow-covered, blue-skied winter wonderlands she was probably hoping for. Catherine arrived on a particularly rainy day and came in rather drenched after the 30-second walk from her expensive sports car. At first glance, I couldn't suppress a bit of a smile. Her business shoes, skirt, blouse, and fur-trimmed overcoat were pretty far removed from the oftentimes mud-drenched hikers, dog owners, and young families from the cities we usually get here. Misjudging her arched eyebrows, I took her to be surprised, perhaps negatively, and half prepared myself for a walkout. Whoops, I was quite wrong there. Turns out this was her happy look. She complimented our common area, which doubles as a breakfast room and has a self-serve bar, reception, and fireplace. Granted, the latter is intentionally extra cozy on dreary days. Having been shown her room, she was quite content. Now, normally, we don't offer daily housekeeping, but I decided to ask her if she'd prefer that. No, I'm fine. I actually prefer it if I can just keep my own mess lying around for a few days. She told us she'd just let us know if she needed anything. A woman after my own heart. The next few days, Catherine was decidedly different from our usual guests. At times, a bit eccentric, but always polite and genuinely fun to be around. She forgot her toothbrush and paid us well to get her a new Sonic one on our shopping run. Do you own a Sonic toothbrush? I just need that feeling of clean teeth, you know? Catherine's breakfast consisted of 2 eggs, fruit, mozzarella, and cheese, but no bread. Flat white with oat milk. Oh, and a cigarette on the patio after. In the evenings, after having had dinner somewhere, she'd often buy a bottle of wine from our bar, never without offering us a glass too. When she expressed her disappointment with the weather, it remained stormy and rainy throughout her stay. We quickly came up with alternative activities. National Park and Natural History Museum, a tour through a historic mine, and a spa day. We even booked her a driver from the village so she could sample the local liquors and spirits. Catherine being Catherine, she befriended a young hiker couple, let's call them Lynn and Tina, from another room one evening over a bottle of wine or two. The next day, they all went shopping for outdoor clothing in Tina's beat-up little old car, since Catherine's two-seater couldn't fit them all. Catherine left in white trainers and her fur-trimmed coat, only to return with new top-of-the-line hiking boots, trousers, and an insulated winter and rain coat that cost decidedly more than a week's stay with us. She even bought Lynn and Tina a pair of gloves each, the smallest item they could come up with when she offered to buy them something, as they later told me. To her credit, the very next day she put those hiking boots to good use and joined Lynn and Tina for a hike that would take 5 hours on a good day. They came back after 7, wet, muddy, and happy, especially after we brought out the hot chocolate. Later, Catherine discreetly asked me for a Band-Aid and disinfectant. Apparently, she hadn't been aware that hiking boots should ideally be broken in with series of shorter hikes. Her blisters had gotten so bad that they had burst. The next day, feeling sorry for her, I bought her my favorite blister pads. That afternoon, she actually bought me a bottle of wine, she knew my favorite by then, to say thanks. Catherine checked out this morning after having kissed me and my partner on both cheeks 3 times, thanking us profusely for a great hidden gem that you have created here, leaving a very generous tip and promising to come back. Not going to lie, I was genuinely touched, but didn't think anything would come from it. What can I say? She wasn't lying. Just now, I received a phone call from Catherine's personal assistant. They've booked the entire B&B, 24 people, including some bunk beds. I triple-checked and was assured that's fine, for a family get-together. They'll stay a full week in October and have asked me to work out a bespoke itinerary that's quite eclectic, including an informal vegetarian pizza night in our garden, as well as a high-end Michelin star restaurant visit in the next town over. I already called them. They're happy to open specifically for Catherine's group on a specific date. Additionally, the assistant asked me for Lynn and Tina's contact details since Catherine wants to hire them as dedicated hiking guides and photographers for a day or two. They have a semi-successful hiking-themed Instagram. I called Lynn. He had a good laugh and will talk to Tina, since he had absolutely loved to make it work. Shorter hikes this time, he promised. Guys, all the feels. With the risk of being cheesy, it's days like this that I genuinely love my job. It'll never make me rich, unless Catherine would like to buy the property, but the services we offer make people from all walks of life genuinely happy, and to me, that's even better. Am I the jerk for not listening to my sister-in-law's request for a child-free party? I'm extremely close to my cousin, and he's the closest to a sibling in my life, myself not having any siblings. So naturally, when he got married, I was super excited to welcome a sister into my life. My sister-in-law is, however, not as excited as I was, and I get that. So the first time I got a cold vibe from her, I stepped back and apologized to her for overwhelming her. This happened a year back, and after this incident, we hardly met up a few times, and each time we were civil. Sister-in-law is, at best, aloof from our family, and my cousins think that it's because she comes from a completely different background, and her family was not as large as ours. I'm not sure if it's necessary to mention this, but we are a South Asian family, myself and cousin belonging to the second generation, and sister-in-law is white. We later came to know that sister-in-law does not like kids. Our family has a lot of them, my kids as well as kids of other cousins, which is why she gets overwhelmed. So she started coming to our get-togethers less often, and we get that. She was always invited, but she would politely decline every time. Coming to the main topic, my cousin will have to relocate to a different continent for a year and wanted to visit me once before leaving. He offered to come over to our place with sister-in-law. I told him that they were always welcome, but sister-in-law informed me that she wants to visit just us and she doesn't want to be with the kids. I have 2 who are 5 and 2. She just wants us adults. I offered that we could go out for dinner. She refused and told me that she wanted to drink and let loose. I told her that if she wants to come over to our place, then she is always welcome, but the kids will be here. I told them that the kids go to sleep by 7:30 and we can catch up after that. She refused to that as well. She wants us to keep the kids at a friend's house. We have many in the neighborhood. I told her that 1, I'm not comfortable with keeping my kids away for the night, and 2, this is our house, meaning the kids' house as well, and that she's the guest. So we get to decide if the kids stay or go. Now sister-in-law thinks I'm a huge jerk for refusing just one night of fun. Am I the jerk here? Should I have just listened to her? Edit. Cousin and sister-in-law are married. It was a court marriage. Both of them did not want a big one. 2. So I did not mention that my cousin was not there during the conversation. After this short fiasco, I did not get the time to speak to him, but I did tell my parents as I was upset. Not sure what happened there, but hopefully I will know soon. 3. Someone mentioned that I might not like sister-in-law. I will not say that I dislike her because, frankly, she's not done anything till then to be disliked. She was quiet, but she was civil. And after a couple of gatherings, she stopped visiting completely, so I would say I'm indifferent towards her. 4. My cousin always had made it clear that he does not want kids, so they were definitely on the same page in this case. Nobody has mentioned this, but I still wanted to let you know that I am totally pro-child-free events. Or I am and will always stand by someone who decides not to have kids. These are completely personal decisions and I respect them. I've seen marriages fall apart because of one incorrect decision of having kids when the couples were not ready. I know how serious a decision this is. I fully support people who do not want to have kids, and I also think it's completely fine to dislike them altogether. A personal choice that I fully respect. Not the jerk. Them being in their beds and asleep is an issue? What kind of nonsense is this? Maybe she really doesn't want to see you guys before the trip and this is an excuse. She can say to her husband now, "See, they won't even accommodate one simple request." I'd communicate with cousin on these issues, not her, or in a group chat that he's on so you can know that he sees the text. Would I be the jerk for wanting to move out in less than a month after my roommate tried to increase the rent? I, 26 female, live with my best friend, 27 male, of 10 years. He will be referred to as W from this point on to make it a bit clearer. We've been living together for almost 2 years and it's been great. We get along and only have had a few arguments, which I feel is normal, but nothing outrageous until a few days ago. A couple months ago, W asked me how I felt about having a third roommate. I gave him a clear answer of no. I'm not comfortable with that for a couple of reasons, as we only have one bathroom and this other roommate would be male. I'm currently in the tiniest bedroom and said third roommate would get the biggest. W understood my point and even offered me the biggest room. Now fast forward to a couple days ago. W brings up third roommate again, but this time it's not a discussion. He says, "I talked to third roommate and he seems serious, so I don't know when I'll have him move in." I ask right away, "So this isn't an if, it's a when now?" W says yes. I was already thinking about how could he do that without discussing it with me first. We both pay bills directly down the middle, and I had just as much right to have a valid input on these things, but he just made that decision alone. Fine. Financial troubles suck, and if this would ease some, then I can deal with being a bit uncomfortable. There was also the bonus of having rent and bills split 3 ways, so that's a plus. The following day, I mentioned to W about moving my stuff upstairs. W begins to explain that whoever moves upstairs is getting charged $100 extra because the space is bigger. The rent is $730. Split, that's $365. So I say, that means I would have to pay basically what I'm paying now? W responds with, "No, you would have to pay $465. I ask W how much I would have to pay if I just stayed in my current room, and W says I would still have to pay $365. I go to say that's unfair and that they already said I can move upstairs. W responds with, "I can't change my mind?" W starts to yell at me, saying they do everything from washing the dishes, shoveling snow, and taking out the trash, and that I just sit on my butt all day. He says that life isn't fair, or that, "That's life, get over it," and that the world doesn't revolve around me. A little context, we both believe that if you make the mess, you clean it up. I absolutely never wash the dishes because I do not cook or use the dishes. If I'm not ordering takeout, I buy paper plates, forks, bowls, spoons, etc. because of this exact reason. If I use a dish, I wash it right away, always. When W cooks, he uses every single dish he can, as well as getting the kitchen as dirty as humanly possible. W told me not to shovel the snow because of my known back problems. I absolutely do slack on the trash, and I admitted that and apologized for that. I decided to move out in 15 days or less. I don't plan on telling him, but I'm not gonna hide it either. Would I be the jerk? So he's moving in a third person to decrease his cost, but not yours? Not the jerk. And I'd be sure that your mail is immediately forwarded to a P.O. box until you know your future address. No, if you can leave, do it. W is over here making big household decisions and expecting you to just suck it up and go along. If you aren't happy, you can leave, and roommate number 3 can become roommate number 2. If he says anything about it, you can say you changed your mind. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. OP, the first thing you need to do is notify your landlord, your stepfather in this case, that a third person might be moving in and you aren't happy about the situation and might move out. Any tenant that wants to move another housemate in needs to notify their landlord first. Am I the jerk for telling my husband I want his sisters to move out? Please let me know if I'm in the wrong, because my husband just made me feel like I was being too emotional about the situation. My husband and I built a house a few years ago with extra bedrooms, thinking it would be great to host family. Now, a few years later, 2 of his siblings live with us. For context purposes, the older one pays us rent, but the younger one only contributes very little, utility contribution, because they're in school and we wanted to help them save money. On to the issue. I find myself carrying the burden of managing the household for everyone. I'm also a mom and I work full-time, so the load is already heavy. The older sibling has not contributed to any form of cleaning of the home or doing any chores since they moved in. I can count on one hand how many times they've made dinner for the household. Cleaning the bathroom? Nope. Dishes? Nope. Eating our food? Of course. There's more, but I guess it didn't bother me as much until the second sibling moved in and acts identical to the first sibling, meaning double the work. Today I spent hours cleaning out the pantry and fridge, throwing away expired junk and brand new bags of Costco-sized food. I just couldn't believe the amount of work I did today just in the kitchen, while also taking care of my sick kid and all the things that come with that. I was exhausted, to be frank, but not just from today. It seems like everything just piles up. I really want them gone. It's been too many months of living like this and too many talks and reminders to each of them separately with no changes. When my husband got home tonight, I just unloaded on him. My emotions were high. I was very upset and hurt, crying, etc. And he basically told me to stop acting like this. This shouldn't consume my thoughts and we don't have to address it now. And he didn't understand why I was so upset. I just wanted to vent about the mental load of managing so many tasks for so many people, and he didn't want to hear anything about me being overwhelmed. It's really hurtful to me to not be able to express myself without being shut down immediately. He didn't want to talk about resolution or what we should do. Literally anything I brought up was responded to with, "You keep going on about this." I don't even know how to respond to that. I mean, yeah, I'm uncomfortable in my own home and I'm exhausted and crap needs to change. But it doesn't have to change tonight. Am I really blowing this out of proportion? Am I the jerk? Please help me. Not the jerk, but your main issue here is your marriage. How come you're doing all of this and your husband isn't? You should kick the 3 siblings out or take your kid and go on a long vacation. Not the jerk. Move out for a week or a month and let them deal with the household without you. They won't learn if you keep cleaning up after them. Karen threatens me with child support. I laugh in her face. The title makes me sound like the biggest jerk in the world, but hear me out. I, 35 male, have 4 kids. My youngest is 6 and my oldest is 14, all to my ex-wife Clara. I have 2 girls and 2 twin boys who are 10. I love my kids more than life. I work full-time, so my kids live with my ex, although sometimes they will come to my house after school and I will drop them off the next morning on my way to work. My kids come to my house almost every weekend, except for when they stay at grandparents' or friends' houses. My ex doesn't have a very good job. She's a cashier, and her boyfriend works at KFC. I know money is tight for them, so I often send the kids home with snacks for school. I buy them most of their clothes and a lot of extra things that they want, like jewelry, phones, PlayStations, etc. Well, the other day, Clara called me asking if we could meet up for lunch. As soon as I got there, she got straight to the point, saying she expected $500 in child support every week or she's taking me to court. I laughed at her and she called me an arrogant deadbeat and walked out. Although I do have a good paying job and I could pay her, it's the principle of it. If she had just told me that the money was tight, I would have said of course and chipped in. But seeing as she demanded it, I don't want to. My eldest daughter is asking me to, because she doesn't want her mom to make sure I don't see my kids anymore. But to be honest, I don't think she stands a chance in court. My parents and sister told me I am a huge jerk for not only freaking out my daughter, but not paying Clara when she needs it the most. So, am I the jerk? Update. These comments are making some good points, but I'm awfully confused now. I've never thought about why there was never a plan in place. I just signed the papers and it never really got brought up again. When we first divorced, I asked her what custody was going to look like, and she just said, don't worry about it. Before she got her job, I was paying around $100 every second week, but when she got the job, she told me that the money made her feel like she was dependent on me. But there was never actually an order in place. I just never thought about it. Is there someone I should go to look at things and see what I should do? I think you should go to a court so a judge can decide a fair amount of child support for the kids. It's about their well-being, not yours or their mother's. Go to court to figure out how much to give your kids the best life possible. Am I the jerk for refusing to answer to a nickname I don't like? I, 28 female, was named after a really obscure character from Greek mythology. My preferred nickname is taken from the end of my name. I always introduce myself with, I'm my name, but you can call me nickname. None of my coworkers in the small business we work for have ever had a problem with this before, until Megan, who's 25, the niece of Jeff, who's in his 50s, one of the two owners, was hired. Jeff and Dave, both in their 50s, co-own the business, but Dave does the actual day-to-day running of the business. I introduced myself and my nickname as usual, but she immediately said that Bessie, not the actual name, would be a better nickname because it comes from the beginning of my name and that she liked it better. I told her I really didn't like that nickname and wouldn't answer to it and asked her to please not call me Bessie, but she insisted that it was so much prettier and that I just needed to get used to it. For the next 2 months, she tried to call me Bessie, but I completely ignored her whenever she addressed me that way, even when I knew she really needed my help with something. She would call my desk phone and say, "Hey Bessie." I would reply, "You have the wrong number, there's no Bessie here," and hang up. She then tried to get some of the employees outside the office to start calling me Bessie, but I quickly shut that down. I usually finish my work early and help them with a lot of tedious little things that aren't part of my job description and threatened to stop helping them unless she used my preferred nickname. Friday, she decided she was going to get me to respond to Bessie no matter what. We have an open office design, but are at opposite ends. She started calling out Bessie in a sing-along voice over and over again to try and annoy me enough to respond. Other coworkers got annoyed, most telling her to stop, and one, Lisa, who's 43, telling me to just let her call me Bessie already. I refused, and she kept calling out Bessie louder and louder until Dave barged in. He had been on a conference call with an important client and could hear yelling from his office down the hall. He told her to be quiet and that if she called me Bessie one more time, he'd write her up and dock her pay. Later, Megan cornered me in the break room, called me a jerk for getting her in trouble, and called me Bessie again for good measure, just as Dave was walking in to heat up his lunch. He gave her a stern look and said, "I warned you." Then he walked to HR to have her written up. Lisa is saying I'm the jerk for never helping Megan, and that if I had been nicer or hadn't fought her so hard on the nickname, she probably would have given up on it a while ago. But because I made such a big deal out of it, it became a challenge. So Reddit, am I the jerk? You're not the jerk. You established a boundary, and her determination to break it is going to keep getting her into trouble. My entitled neighbors stole my garage twice. I live in the northeast of England, and I'm originally from Wales. I've owned a house in Wales I've been renting out for the last 10 years. Everything has been super smooth until a year ago. The tenant stopped paying rent, made multiple promises to pay, etc. In the end, I got so frustrated, I decided to sell the place. I cut my losses on the outstanding rent, circa £3,000, and told the tenant if he left by certain date, I'd write off the rent. Tenant goes over the deadline by a couple of weeks, but ultimately leaves. However, the house is in a terrible condition. The tenant had painted many of the walls bright orange and had got this paint everywhere, including the carpet and skirting boards. The oven had half-cooked rotten food. He had been too lazy to put rubbish in the outside bin, so simply threw it in the shed. Anyway, a bit of a side story, but for context, I live 6 hours away, but my mom and stepfather live 30 minutes away. I've decided to sell, but of course I can't sell the house in its current state. My mom has generously offered to help, and we set a date for me to come back down to start the work. We order a skip, etc. 2 solid days' work later, the place is looking much better. It's not going to win House of the Year, but enough to sell. One of the issues is that we can't seem to get the garage key to work. My stepfather promises to come the following week and drill the lockout. Fast forward to the following week, and my stepfather is in the process of drilling the lockout when he's interrupted by a neighbor who we will call Entitled Neighbor. Entitled Neighbor.
Excuse me, can you please stop doing that? You're damaging my garage.
Stepfather. Actually, this garage belongs to my stepson who's selling this house. Entitled Neighbor.
Well, I've been using this garage for the last 12 months, so he has no right.
Stepfather doesn't know what to say. Turns out that the entitled neighbor noticed the tenant wasn't using the garage, so drilled out the locks, swapped a new lock, and started using it. When it was finally opened, it was full to the brim with his stuff. He didn't think anyone would notice. I find out the information and call him, telling him he has 24 hours to empty the garage and replace the lock. He can't do it within 24 hours apparently, but apologizes and promises to drop the new keys through the letterbox in a few days. It's annoying, but luckily it's all working out and I don't want to cause too much hassle with the neighbor. My mom visited the house the following week, picked up the key, opened the garage, and yes, it was now empty. Job done. Fast forward 6 months, house is sold, arranging key handover, etc. However, I get a text from the new owner the following day. Under the sale contract, it's my responsibility to ensure the house and any buildings are empty for the sale. Otherwise, I can be liable for costs, etc. Straight away, I know what's happened and call the entitled neighbor. Turns out he kept a spare key on the lock change. Yes, in hindsight, I should have had my own lock, but I didn't think anyone would be that stupid. He noticed no one was using the garage, so he decided to start using it again. I was furious. He couldn't understand why I was so mad.
But you weren't using it, so what's the big issue?
Well, did you ask my permission? No. Does the garage belong to you? No. What do you expect? I gave him 1 hour to clear the garage before I call the police and order a clearance company to empty the garage. The sheer cheek of the man. Anyway, all sorted now, garage is empty, locks have been changed, and having sold the property, the entitled neighbor is now someone else's problem. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.